The first time I caught Edward naked in our pool house with his assistant, I didn't scream. I took photos. And then I took everything else. The Arizona sun was brutal that afternoon, the kind that turns swimming pools into mirrors and ambition into sweat. I had come home early for my charity luncheon. Sylvia, the dutiful wife, because the shrimp tartlets tasted like regret. I heard them before I saw them, giggles tangled with the hum of the pool filter. There he was. My husband of 12 years, Edward Hartman, CEO of Hartman Holdings, pressed against the glass wall of the pool house, his tan hands gripping the hips of a girl young enough to be his daughter. His assistant, Clara. Her coral pink manicure left streaks on the glass. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I raised my phone and snapped 3 photos. The click 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 froze them mid-moan. Edward's head whipped around, his blue eyes wide as shattered crystal. Clara screamed, scrambling for her dress. I just stood there, my Valentino heels sinking into the turf, thinking, this is how marriages end. Not with a bang, but with a half-naked man and a receipt for pool chemicals. He begged, of course. It meant nothing, Sylvia, Edward pleaded that night, his voice cracking like he had rehearsed it in the mirror. I will cut her off. I will do anything. I sat at the edge of our king-sized bed, still in my cream Chanel suit, staring at the Picasso above the fireplace, a grotesque weeping woman. How fitting. Anything? I repeated, tilting my head. My reflection in the bedroom window looked calm, almost bored. Inside, I was a struck match. Anything, he vowed, kneeling like a sinner in church. So I asked for $2 million. He blinked. What? Transfer it to my private account. Tonight. I unsheathed my voice like a knife. Or I leak these photos to your board. To Forbes. To our daughter's preschool. He did it. Of course he did. Edward valued his reputation more than his heartbeat. By dawn, the money was mine. I kissed his forehead after, cool as mint. We will rebuild, I lied. For a year, I played the martyr. Hosted dinner parties where I laughed too loud at his jokes. Let him buy me emerald necklaces and ski trips to Aspen. Watched him flinch every time my phone buzzed. But at night, I would lie awake, replaying those pool house giggles. The way Clara's back arched. The way Edward hadn't even apologized, just negotiated. That is when I decided, forgiveness was for saints. Revenge was for wives. 1 year later. My phone lit up on the marble countertop as I poured Edward's morning coffee. George, landscaping your husband's away until Friday. My place? I smiled, stirring in a splash of almond milk, Edward's newest allergy. Bad news, darling? He asked, shrugging on his Tom Ford blazer. Just Lila, I said, sliding his coffee across the counter. Book club's picking a new read. He kissed my cheek, his cologne clinging like a secret. Love you, Syl. The garage door hummed shut. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over George's message. Click. Me, I will bring the wine. That night, as Edward's plane soared toward a Miami conference, I stood in front of my closet, wondering what a woman wears to ruin her life. Red lace? Silk? Or nothing at all? Revenge tastes like diesel and sweat. George's pickup truck smelled of freshly cut grass and gasoline. I climbed into the cab, my silk blouse snagging on a frayed seatbelt, and thought, this is what freedom feels like, cheap vinyl and bad decisions. He didn't say hello. Just grinned, all sunburned lips and calloused hands, and peeled out of the dirt lot behind his landscaping shop. The first time was against the truck's fogged-up window, my back pressed to cold glass. His hands were rougher than Edward's, his mouth less polite. I didn't close my eyes. Instead, I stared at the pine tree air freshener dangling from the rearview mirror, swaying like a metronome, and let myself feel it, the anger, the power, the recklessness. You are quiet, George muttered afterward, flicking ash from his cigarette out the window. I am married, I said, buttoning my blouse with steady hands. He laughed, sharp and low. Not for long, if you keep this up. Flashback. Edward's voice, slick as oil, the night I demanded his money. You will destroy us, Sylvia. I had leaned in, close enough to taste his lies. You already did that. I started lying. Book club's reading Anna Karenina, I told Edward that Thursday straight-faced, as he scrolled through stock prices on his iPad. The adultery one? He didn't look up. The tragedy one, I corrected, slipping on my coat. George was waiting in the parking garage of the downtown library, engine idling. This time, he brought a blanket. This time, he took his time. You're different, he said later, tracing the scar on my hip, a relic from Emila's C-section. Flashback. Edward, 2 months post-betrayal, handing me a Tiffany's box at dinner. For my loyal girl. The sapphire bracelet inside weighed more than my wedding ring. Lila cornered me after Pilates. You're playing a dangerous game, Syl. We stood in the gym's parking lot, Arizona heat warping the asphalt. I adjust my sunglasses. What game? Do not. She gripped my arm. I covered for you last week when Edward called me about book club, but this? She lowered her voice. George? The guy who mows your lawn? I yanked free. You sound jealous. I sound smart. She tossed her gym bag into her Mercedes. He will catch you. And when he does. I drove to George's shop instead of home. The third time was in his apartment, a studio above the landscaping office, reeking of weed and ambition. He pinned my wrists to the mattress, and for a heartbeat, I hated him. Hated his torn band tees, his chipped tooth, his simplicity. Hated how he made me forget. Afterward, he kissed my shoulder. Stay. I dressed in the dark. I can't. What? Scared? I paused at the door. Of you? Never. Flashback. Edward, last Christmas, drunk on bourbon and guilt, slurring into my hair, you're too good for me, Syl. I had smiled. I know. The diamond earrings arrived on a Friday. Edward placed the velvet box beside my coffee cup, his tie perfectly knotted, his smile rehearsed. For my best girl, he said. They were grotesque. Teardrop-shaped, glinting like frozen tears. They are stunning, I managed. He kissed me, his lips tasting of mint and deceit. I will never hurt you again. I waited until his Tesla disappeared down the driveway. Then I vomited in the hydrangeas. That night, George texted, I am done sharing you. And Edward, oblivious, snored softly in our bed, one hand resting on my waist like a claim. Guilt is a stain. But power? Power is a perfume. I met Kim on a Tuesday morning, during the 7 a.m. hot Vinyas VE clarity class. She stood at the front of the studio, all sinew and serenity, her black leggings clinging like a second skin. Her voice was a blade wrapped in velvet. Breathe through the fire. It is the only way to burn clean. Edward had left for work early, his goodbye kiss lingering too long. Testing me. I rolled out my mat in the back row. Kim's gaze snagged on mine as she demonstrated a cobra pose, her spine arching like a drawn bow. Some of you, she said, eyes locked on me, are here to escape. Others. To become someone else. By the third downward dog, sweat pooled between my breasts. By the fifth, Kim's hands were on my hips, correcting my stance. Her fingers dug in, deliberate. You're holding back, she murmured. Do not. Flashback. George, 2 nights prior, slamming his fist on my kitchen island. You're using me. I had sipped my Chardonnay. And you're letting me. After class, Kim cornered me by the lockers. You're new. I am married, I said, toweling off my neck. She laughed, low and unbothered. So am I. Her studio apartment smelled of sandalwood and ambition. We didn't make it to the bed. Kim pressed me against the locked studio door after the 6 p.m. class, her mouth hot and demanding. Unlike George's frantic hunger, Kim moved with precision, a predator dissecting prey. You're terrible, she whispered, biting my earlobe as I clawed at her sports bra. So are you, I gasped. Flashback. Edward, that morning, squinting at my phone. Who's Lila Book Club? I had plucked the phone from his hand, cool as a thief. My friend. Don't be paranoid. I crafted lies like origami. Yoga retreat, I told Edward that weekend, packing lavender leggings and a lie. Lilith's coming. He eyed my duffel bag. Since when do you like yoga? Since I realized how flexible it makes me. I kissed him, slow and venomous. Kim's retreat was a rented cabin in Sedona. For 48 hours, we didn't sleep. She taught me poses that had nothing to do with Zen. Control isn't in the holding, she said, pinning my wrists to the rug. It is in the surrender. I almost believed her. Flashback. Lila, over martinis. Edward called again. Asked why book club was suddenly so athletic. I stirred the olive. Tell him we are reading 50 Shades. The guilt hit on a Thursday, during Emily's ballet recital. My 8-year-old pirouette across the stage, her tutu fluttering like a wounded bird. I sat in the front row, flanked by Edward and Kim's text burning in my purse. I want you in my bed tonight. No excuses. Emily stumbled. The audience winced. Edward squeezed my hand. She will get it next time. I didn't let go. For once. That night, Kim's nails raked down my back. You're distracted. I am a mother, I snapped. She rolled away. Then go home and mother. I did. Edward was waiting. Long retreat, he said, eyes on the news but voice like a tripwire. I handed him a fake receipt. Lila lost the real one. The next morning, Edward tossed a silver cufflink onto the kitchen island. Monogrammed GW. Found this in your car, he said. Who the hell is George Wilson? The truth doesn't set you free. It strangles you slowly. Edward tossed the silver cufflink onto the kitchen island like a grenade. It skidded to a stop in front of me, the initials GW glinting under the recessed lights. My coffee turned to acid in my throat. Who the hell is George Wilson? He demanded, his voice eerily calm. I picked up the cufflink, rolling it between my fingers like a chess piece. The landscaper. He must have dropped it during the patio renovation last week. Bullshit. Edward's laugh was hollow. You think I am stupid? You have been at yoga 3 nights a week. Book club texts at midnight. And now this? He leaned in, his breath hot with rage. Who is he? I met his glare, unblinking. You're paranoid. Just like you were with Clara. His fist slammed the counter. Don't you dare. Don't I dare? I stood, my chair screeching. You lost the right to question me the second you screwed that girl in our pool house. He flinched. For the first time in years, I saw fear in his eyes. Flashback. George hours earlier, slamming me against his truck. Leave him. Or I will make you. Me laughing. You're replaceable. Like a lawnmower blade. I fled to Kim's studio. She locked the door, her hands already pulling at my blouse. You're late. Not today. I shoved her off. Edward knows. So? She smirked, twisting a lock of my hair around her finger. Pay me $10,000, or I forward our Sedona photos to his inbox. The room tilted. You're joking. She held up her phone. A video played, my bare back arching under her hands, my voice gasping. Don't stop. Cash. Tonight. She kissed my cheek. Or your daughters find out who mommy really is. Flashback. Edward, proposing on a private yacht. Trust is all we need, Syl. The diamond had felt like a shackle. That night, I seduced my husband. I wore the red lace negligee he had bought for our anniversary, the one still tagged in my drawer. His hands trembled as he unclasped it, his mouth trailing apologies down my neck. I closed my eyes and thought of George's rough palms, Kim's teeth on my spine, anything to keep from screaming. Afterward, Edward wept into my hair. I will fix this. I will be better. I stared at the ceiling. Too late. Flashback. Lila years ago, giggling over wine. You would make a killer spy, Syl. Now she wouldn't return my calls. The text came at 3 a.m. Unknown number. I know what you did. A photo followed, me and George in his truck, my head thrown back in fake ecstasy. Unknown number. $50,000 by dawn. Or he sees this. I deleted it. Then I vomited. The next morning, a black SUV parked outside Emily's school. Inside, a man in sunglasses held up a photo of Kim and me. He texted. TikTok, Mrs. Hartman. Some women cry when their marriages end. I poured gasoline and lit the match. Lila sat at my kitchen island, her manicured fingers drumming the marble. Sunlight sliced through the blinds, painting tiger stripes over her guilty face. She didn't wait for coffee. Edward knows, she said. I froze, the knife hovering over the strawberries I had been slicing for Emily's lunch. Knows what? Everything. The affairs. The money, me, her voice cracked. He offered me $500,000 to confirm it. I took it. The knife clattered to the counter. You bitch. She stood, tears smudging her mascara. You were out of control, Sylvia. George? Kim? You think this was just about revenge? You're sick. I hurled a strawberry at her. It exploded against the fridge like a bloodstain. Get out. Flashback. Edward, the morning after our wedding, whispering, I will love you forever, as dawn gilded the hotel sheets. Forever lasted 12 years, 3 mistresses, and 1 signed prenup. The divorce papers arrived at noon. Edward's lawyer smirked on my doorstep. Prenup clause 14b, he said. Infidelity voids all financial claims. I burned the papers in the kitchen sink, watching flames lick Edward's loopy signature. Then I called Kim. She answered on the 3rd ring. $10,000. Cash. Tonight. I met her in a motel off Route 66, the kind where rooms rent by the hour. She wore leather and a smirk. Here to negotiate? She tossed her hair, all false confidence. I dropped the envelope of cash on the bed. Here to end this. She counted the bills, slow. You're smarter than I thought. I doused the envelope in gasoline from my purse. Her eyes widened. What the fuck? The match landed with a hiss. Flashback. George, sobbing in my driveway a week prior. I love you. Me, cold as January. Love is for children. Now leave. Edward came for me at midnight. You will get nothing, he spat, silhouetted in the doorway. Not the house. Not the accounts. Nothing. I sat cross-legged on our bed, wearing the lace negligee he had bought for our anniversary. Sit. Go to hell. I opened my laptop. Sit. Or I email the IRS your offshore tax files. He paled. You're bluffing. I clicked send. His scream shook the chandelier. The fire started in his office. Not a real one though, God knows I fantasized. It was the Wall Street Journal headline the next morning. Hartman Holdings CEO under investigation for $200 million tax fraud. Edward smashed his whiskey glass against the portrait of us from Santorini. You will rot for this. I sipped my tea. But you will rot first. Flashback. Lila years ago, toasting me at my bridal shower, to Sylvia, the real queen. Now, she is blocking my number. I met George one last time. He had shaved his beard. Looked younger. Looked free. I am moving to Colorado, he said, kicking dirt over his landscaper's shed. I handed him an envelope. For the silence. He tore it open. $100,000 in crisp bills. Still buying your way out, huh? Still selling? I shot back. He kissed me, a bitter, bruising thing, and left. The final text came as I packed my suitcase. Unknown number. You win. Edward. I blocked him. The papers called me a gold digger. Emily's teachers pity her. Lila writes a memoir. But the $2 million? Untouched. And Edward? Last I heard, he is selling timeshares in Boca Raton. Final line. I lost my marriage, my friends, my soul. But I kept the money. And the silence. If you enjoyed Sylvia's tale of betrayal and revenge, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Cheater's Confession for more gripping, twisted stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss a scandal.